You're not weak. You were just trained the wrong way to survive. From the moment you were a boy, you were told to be kind, to be gentle, to love unconditionally. And you listened. You gave your heart with sincerity. You texted first. You were patient. You tried to understand her. And then she left. For a guy who didn't care about her beyond his ego. The world doesn't reward kindness unless it's backed by strength. Women don't leave you because you're good. They leave because you're weak. Because you need to be chosen. And that need. That's what kills your value. You thought if I love her hard enough, she'll stay. But no, brother. Love never makes anyone stay. Only value and boundaries do. She didn't betray you. She simply responded to the energy you projected, a man who was always ready to sacrifice himself just to be accepted. You were taught to serve love like it was a god. But the truth is, you don't exist to be loved. You exist to become the kind of man who doesn't need to be chosen in order to stay whole. Most modern men aren't living as themselves. They're living as filtered versions, polite, agreeable, predictable, and constantly afraid of being misunderstood. They believe that if they just show enough care, enough patience, enough kindness, love will arrive. But what actually happens? She starts texting less. She says she needs space. She grows distant. And finally she says, "You're a great guy, but I just don't feel it anymore." A great guy? Then why did she choose someone who's not? Here's the truth. You didn't get left because you were good. You got left because you lost the only thing that makes a man magnetic: unpredictability, self-possession, and the energy of a man who doesn't need anyone to feel complete. Women aren't drawn to kindness alone. They're drawn to mystery, to depth, to the feeling that he could have me, but he doesn't need me. When you become too easy to understand, you kill the spark. When you're always available, you destroy your own sacredness. Love doesn't grow in comfort. It's ignited in rarity. Predictability is the death of attraction. Ask yourself, why is it that some men walk into a room and the entire atmosphere shifts? It's not because they're better looking than you. It's not because they're more successful. It's because they move through the world like they don't need to be accepted. They carry a quiet gravity that makes people lean in. That's what you lost when you became the good guy. You were the one who did everything for her only for her to leave you for someone who did nothing. And you thought women make no sense. But no, she simply responded to biology, evolutionary psychology, and attachment dynamics. A man who's always present, always eager, always ready to please, is a man who no longer holds masculine polarity in her eyes. Strong men don't beg for affection. They inspire it. They don't ask for attention. They attract it. With standards, restraint, and a silence that feels heavy. You thought you didn't have the right to set standards. You thought you had to prove your worth. But that's exactly why you were overlooked. Men today are starving for validation. They want to know, am I good enough yet? But the real question is not, will she choose me? It's who am I becoming that I no longer need to be chosen? You don't need tricks to get women to chase you. You need to live by standards that make them realize, if I don't bring something real, I'm not getting in. And this is not a game. It's not about manipulation. It's about energetic positioning. It's not about withholding. It's about preserving what's sacred. The more you need to be loved, the less lovable you become. Because no one can truly love you while you're still outsourcing your sense of worth. You were the man who gave everything. For a glance, a hug, a promise. But what you didn't realize was this. When you give everything and keep nothing for yourself, there's nothing left for her to respect. Power doesn't come from how much you can give. It comes from how well you know when not to give. You weren't born to be the good guy in someone else's story. You were born to write your own. And in that story, if someone wants to enter, they better bring truth. Or they can walk. Here's the truth. Women are not attracted to your effort. They're drawn to your state of being. It's not about what you do for her. It's about who you are when you do nothing at all. That's the lesson most modern men were never taught. From a young age you were told, if you just give enough, she'll stay. But you didn't realize that in a woman's world, love doesn't come through logic. It comes through felt energy. She doesn't think you're good to be with. She feels something in you she can't look away from. And that feeling, it doesn't come from how gentle you are. It comes from the sense that you are not easily moved, not easily controlled, and not easily claimed. The more effort you show, the less she feels. Not because you're not good enough, but because you've stopped being an emotional challenge. You must understand every nervous system responds to novelty. And when you become predictable, her brain, not her heart, disconnects first. Desire lives in mystery, in ambiguity, in not knowing exactly what you'll do next. Dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, isn't released when she gets what she expects. It's released when she wonders if she'll get it. You don't need to try to be mysterious. You just need to stop acting like a desperate lottery ticket salesman hoping to be picked. And no, this isn't your fault. This is the programming you inherited from movies, from your mother's advice, from those sweet little be a gentleman posts that sound romantic, but are quietly destroying your masculine center. Society raised you to be soft, sweet, agreeable, but weightless, nice but without edge, patient but not powerful, empathetic but not sovereign. You became the guy who's always there, always texting first, always available, always understanding even when your soul is burning inside. And what happens next? She takes you for granted, not because she's toxic, but because human nature devalues what comes without boundaries. You taught her how to measure you, by how you measured yourself. By always being available, you told her your time had no priority. By replying instantly, you told her your world revolved around hers. By asking, "Are you mad? Did I upset you? Do you still like me?" You showed her you need reassurance more than you need truth. And then the roles flipped. You, the man, started orbiting her standards instead of guarding your own. You thought you were doing it right, but subconsciously, you were killing the very thing that made you attractive in the first place. Your inner power. As Jordan Peterson once said, women feel the structure of your nervous system more than they listen to your words. They don't react to what you say. They react to how anchored you are when you say it. A man who sits in silence but with intention is more attractive than a man who texts paragraphs trying to be emotionally in tune. Remember this: the man who tries to be understood is never remembered. Attraction isn't about being the right match at the right time. It's the primal interaction between nervous systems and energetic signals. When she senses that you don't need her, but you're not chasing anyone else either, that's when she starts feeling drawn in. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you aren't giving yourself away just to be close. Most men don't realize this. What hurts isn't that she left. What hurts is that you abandoned yourself long before she ever did. You feel betrayed because she pulled away, because she changed, because she left. But if you're honest, you'll see that the first one to walk away was you. You walked away from yourself the moment you felt her interest, and immediately morphed into the man you thought she wanted. You silenced your truth, you softened your edges, you compromised your core, just to keep things good. And from that moment on, you weren't you anymore. You were a performance, a character auditioning for love. But here's the brutal truth. Love built on pretending always collapses. Women don't respond to behavior, they respond to structure. And do you know what kills structure? Neediness, dependence, fear of loss. You weren't attractive when you said "I love you." You were attractive when you could say, "If you can't respect my boundaries, I won't stay." But when was the last time you actually meant that? Or have you been the man who always tries to fix it, always gives one more chance, always tries to understand her, always says it's okay, even when it's not? And you think you're being mature, compassionate, loving, but deep down, you're really saying, "Please don't leave. I'll do anything. Just stay." And in that moment, she stops respecting you, not because she's cruel, but because something in her senses that you've dropped the mantle of masculine integrity. You stopped setting limits, afraid she wouldn't choose you. You stopped standing firm, scared she'd call you toxic. You stopped walking away because you believed you'd never find someone better. And so you became emotionally leash-trained, controlled by silence, manipulated by withdrawal, hooked on uncertainty. You sat there waiting for her to decide if you're good enough to be kept. But listen, a man who doesn't set standards will always live beneath someone else's. You're not loved the way you want to be, because you've never loved yourself the way you need to be. You think you're being kind, but you're just afraid. Afraid of loneliness, afraid of facing that uncomfortable truth that you've built your identity around being wanted, not being true. That's not love. That's emotional dependency wearing a romantic mask. A grown man doesn't hold on to a relationship at all costs. He holds on to his value. And when a relationship no longer reflects that, he walks. Not in anger, not in blame, just in truth. Because he refuses to sell his soul to keep someone else close. And that's what women feel, even if they never say it. Would he be willing to lose me? If it meant keeping himself, if the answer is no, you've already lost. The paradox of attraction is this. The man who needs nothing gains everything. Not because he plays games, but because he won't sacrifice his essence to satisfy his ego. The man who cannot be manipulated is the man who does not fear loss. And the man who does not fear loss can never be controlled. You can be rejected, but if you keep your peace, your strength, and your standards, you never lose. Look inside, brother. Are you searching for love, or just hiding from the silence inside yourself? True freedom doesn't come when she stays. It comes when you no longer need her in order to be yourself. You can't control other people, but you can control the one thing that makes you uncontrollable, your state. And the first thing you need to cultivate is inner stillness. Not the stillness of a man who's numb, but the stillness of a man who no longer needs external validation to feel like he matters. That kind of man doesn't fake being calm. He's not quiet to create anxiety. He's genuinely at peace because he stopped chasing emotional approval. That's the stillness of a man deeply connected to himself, beyond anyone's reach. And from that place you rebuild, brick by brick. But this time, not to impress, to become someone you never have to apologize for being. 1. Rebuild in solitude. Be alone. Not because you hate women, but because you need to detox from the system that taught you love is a reward for your obedience. Be alone so you can make decisions without anyone's permission. Be alone to discover wholeness that doesn't depend on presence or praise. Be alone, not to close yourself off, but to open something deeper, sovereignty. 2. Replace expectations with principles. A man with principles doesn't live by feelings. He lives by commitment. Not commitment to her, but to his own code. Instead of asking, "Does she still love me?" ask, "Did I betray myself to keep her love?" Every time you compromise truth to hold someone close, you dig a shallow grave for your own power. And she will feel it, even if she can't explain it. Because women will always test the edges of your self-respect. Not because they're cruel, but because they want to know, is he real? 3. Cut the performance. You don't need to be funnier. You don't need better text responses. You don't need to vibe match her mood swings. You just need to be deeper, calmer, more grounded, not as a strategy, but because you're done performing. The man who no longer tries to impress becomes rare. And in a world addicted to attention, rarity becomes magnetism. Not because your silence is a trick, but because your energy no longer comes cheap. 4. Let rejection refine you, not define you. You cannot beg someone to stay without abandoning something sacred inside you. And you cannot keep what isn't aligned by being understanding. The mature man doesn't fear rejection. He only fears giving up his dignity to avoid it. Every test, every silence, every withdrawal is a chance to say without words, "I'm not here to be moved." That's not coldness, that's self-respect. 5. Build a life no one else can complete for you. You don't need to be rich, but you do need a mission, something bigger than you, bigger than her, bigger than comfort. Real attraction doesn't come from muscles or money. It comes from the energy of a man so deeply aligned with his purpose that she wonders if she's even ready to walk beside him. Not, "I hope he likes me," But am I enough to rise with him? And she feels that, even when you say nothing. 6. Turn your values into boundaries, not quotes. Don't say, "I only want a respectful woman." Leave any space where respect is absent. No warnings, no second chances, no justification. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. You just need to live in a way that shows. You would rather walk alone with honor than be accepted by betraying yourself. And when you live like that, not out of pain, not out of bitterness, but out of deep inner clarity, the world begins to respond differently. Not just women, life itself. If you've made it this far, I don't need to teach you anything else, because somewhere deep inside a part of you has already woken up. The part that knows you were never born to beg for love. The part that knows you were meant to build a life so powerful, so precise, so magnetic, that love must rise to meet you. You used to be the man who texted first, who waited for replies, who tried to read her mind, who made himself smaller, softer, safer, just to keep the relationship alive. That's okay, we've all been there. But today, something shifted. You stopped playing to be liked. You stopped chasing connection. You stopped fighting for a seat at a table that you were meant to build yourself. You didn't wake up to fight women. You woke up to stop betraying yourself. You're beginning to understand now silence is a message. Boundaries are sacred. Self-respect is non-negotiable. You no longer exist to be chosen. You exist to become the kind of man you yourself admire. The kind of man who enters a room and doesn't demand attention, but alters the energy. Not because he speaks loudly, but because he doesn't need to speak at all. That man is you. If, and only if, you're willing to pay the price: solitude, discipline, walking away from relationships that no longer reflect your truth, and letting go of everything easy for the sake of everything real. And when you walk that path long enough, you'll see you were never abandoned. You were being returned to the one place you forgot yourself. So if this message hit something deep, if it didn't feel like content but a call, share it. Not for views, not for growth, but to pull another brother out of the dark. Let him know he's not alone. That men like you exist, not living by trends, not chasing likes, but walking quietly with standards the world can feel. You're not a follower, you're not a fan, you're a fire. And fires don't wait to be admired. They burn, with or without an audience. You were never meant to beg to be seen. You were born to be the standard others must rise to meet. If that truth lives in you now, we're no longer strangers. We're warriors. See you at the summit.